Next, I'd like to request next presenter, third presenter, Climate Change Impacts on Mountain Livelihoods by Professor Dr. Syed Hafizur Rahman, Professor, Department of Environmental Science and Director, Jahangirnagar University, Bangladesh. So, Professor,
thank you.
Rahman, could you go ahead and request you to finish on time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm really honored to be here in front of highly learned people. The title of my lecture is Climate Change Impacts on Mountain Livelihoods. I am Syed Hafizur Rahman, Professor, Department of Environmental Sciences, Jahangirnagar University, Bangladesh. In my lecture, I will introduce the importance of mountain in brief, then mention the climate change impacts in mountain region and other communities. I will define the livelihood and sustainable livelihoods, and will tell how can we analyze livelihood. I will link ecosystem services with livelihoods in short, and will discuss how livelihood affected by climate changes. In my final slides, I will present the constraints and prospects of sustainable livelihoods. We all know highlands and mountains are vital economic and ecological resources, high in both biodiversity and minerals. Although they occupy only 1/5 of the Earth's land surface and house only 1/10 of its human population, more than half of the world's population is reliant on them, in particular for water resources and agriculture, biodiversity for food production. This figure shows the mountain regions of the Earth. It is taken from the 6th assessment report of IPCC, which has been published last month. 3 billion people in Pakistan, India, Nepal, China, and the Indo-Chinese Peninsula depend on rivers that flow from Himalayas. Similarly, many million rely on the headwaters of the Amazon in the Andes and the Nile and Congo rivers, which flow from the East African highlands. The regional facts from IPCC shows that the freezing level height in mountain areas is projected to rise and will alter snow and ice conditions. Warming has occurred in the Himalayas, Swiss Alps, and the Central Andes, and has increased with altitude. Such elevation-dependent warming could lead to faster changes in the snow line, the glacier equilibrium line altitude, and the snow-rain transition height. The global warming induced earlier onset of spring snowmelt and increased melting of glaciers have already contributed to seasonal changes in stream flow in low elevation mountain catchments. It is virtually certain that snow cover will decline over most land regions during the 21st century in terms of water equivalent, extent, and annual duration. Extreme precipitation is projected to increase in major mountainous regions with potential cascading consequences of floods, landslides, and lake outbursts in all scenarios. Projected runoff is typically decreased by contributions from small glaciers because of glacier mass loss, while runoff from larger glacier will generally increase with increasing global warming levels until their mass become depleted. Now the climate change impacts in mountain region. Yesterday we have learned and we learned about some impacts. Here I mentioned a few more. The land which was used largely for fruit cultivation is currently abundant due to climate changes. The growers' perceptions are that the unproductiveness of fruits plants is due to climate change. The area where intensive cultivation of apple was carried out during the past are now no more for its cultivation. the belt has shifted greatly to higher elevations. This is also case with citrus, nut stones, fruits, and other agricultural crops. Pine trees grow in warm climates, whereas oak trees grow in temperate climates. Due to continuous changes in climatic conditions and the temperature is increasing in the valleys and the mid altitudes, the pine forests have been shifted towards the higher elevation, and they have already invaded the areas where oak forests are growing. The situation has led to the disappearance of oak forest from their original realm. Disappearance of oak forest was also due to its overexploitation because oak trees have multiple uses, from being used as animal fodder to fuelwood for cooking food and warming the houses during the winter season. It has also impact on the cropping pattern. Livelihood and mountain livelihoods. We know most of the people living in the mountain regions are economically vulnerable and socially backward. Living far from the centers of commerce and power, mountain people of the developing world exert little influence over the policies and decisions that influence their lives. Shocks results from natural disasters or political actions, disease, war, and market forces have profound impacts on the livelihoods of mountain people. The areas where consecutive shocks are experienced in the form of droughts, floods, and pests, vulnerability is increasing. Among the mountain communities, cultural and traditional diversity is high. Mountains have ecological, aesthetic, and socio-economic significance, both as natural ecosystems and as people's living place. Mountain people depend on subsistence agriculture, wage labor, circulatory labor migration, tourism, and mountaineering services for their survival. Most households survive on a combination of livelihoods. Mountains are also home to many indigenous peoples with their valuable cultural and indigenous knowledge. As we're talking about livelihood, let's define livelihood, the term livelihood. The term livelihood refers to enough food and cash to meet basic needs, and poverty reduction also mentioned in those livelihoods under the basic definition of poverty. Chambers and Conway explain a livelihood includes the capabilities, assets, and activities required for a means of living. Here, I showed the strategies, livelihood strategy, assets, the decision activity profile, where assets include both material and social resources, or both tangible, intangible resources. Poverty indeed is the result of a lack of these assets. The poor may not have access to these assets, and this could be because of physical constraints like remoteness or resources scarcity. Livelihood aims to generate adequate resources, both cash and non-cash, which is a set of economic activity by utilizing human and material resources. Livelihood includes the access to resource, materials, and service into the content. Besides material and economic supplies, livelihood is also about management of social relationships, personal and group identity, and interrelation of these tasks to each other. Here I present the Sustainable Livelihood Framework of DFID 2001, where livelihood is sustainable when it can cope with and recover from stress and shock, can maintain or build on available capabilities and assets, and does not undermine the natural and resource base. Sustainable livelihood is the long-term goal for poverty reduction that gives adequate importance to development from different levels, scales, and sectors. It is regarded as a conceptual framework can be used to assess and analyze sustainability, capability, security, and resilience of livelihoods in different scales under the complicated and flexible political and economic environment. There are 5 components of sustainable livelihood framework. 1, livelihood assets. 2, vulnerability, transforming structures and processes, livelihood activities and strategies, and finally, the livelihood outcomes. We'll analyze these components through livelihood analysis. Livelihood analysis refers to finding out the degree to which pattern of life differs from one social class to another social class in terms of size of the family, type of house, technology, adapt pattern, size of land holding, annual income, source of income, food habits, expenditure pattern, indebtedness, type of animal owned, migrants in household, seasonality of variation, crisis management pattern, etc. In reality, livelihood analysis analyze multiple activities. There are several variables of livelihood analysis. I mentioned few of them present here, and we can calculate the livelihood sustainability index using the equation which has been presented, Sati 2014 paper towards the sustainable livelihoods and ecosystems in mountain regions book, where household income and household expenditures are calculated from where the livelihood index calculated. Sustainability index has been calculated. The major sources of livelihood comprise agriculture, daily wage labor, jobs, artisanry, animal husbandry, and non-forest product collections. Nearly a quarter of the income is spent on the purchase of food, grains. It has been given from a case study. Household supplies in the form of sugar, spices, edible oil, salt, and cooking gas rank second in the household expenditure. Now I link ecosystem services with the livelihoods. There's a link between ecosystem services and the mountain livelihood. Mountain agri-ecosystems not only provide agricultural commodities such as food and fiber, but also help protect biodiversity, water, carbon storage, and landscape amenity. Global climate change scenarios suggest that there will be a considerable impacts on ecosystem and their associated ecosystem services with serious consequences for livelihoods of communities, particularly in the most economically challenged parts of the world. A significant portion of the mountain people live on less favored land, such as in the upper watersheds of Andes and in the Himalayas and in the East African highlands, where severe degradation of resources is experienced. The world's poor lives in mountain regions, particularly in the developing countries. Mountain landforms triggered precipitation, which coupled with the water storage capacity of glaciers, give them a vital hydrologic load. Mountain nations such as Tibet, Lesotho, Nepal, Rwanda, Burundi, and Ethiopia are among the 20 poorest in the world. In this region, the majority of the population is under 18, and literacy is generally very low. Due to climate change, the climatic conditions have become less predictable, causing the major impacts on traditional livelihood activities such as agriculture and human husbandry. Now I present the major constraints of the two sustainable livelihoods. Lacking in infrastructure facilities such as cold storage and proper marketing system is a major constraint that the products do not receive well manner. Government initiatives are not holistic in some regions. Frequent landslides also act as a constraint to sustainable livelihoods in some areas. Other constraints are a lack of proper marketing of various cash generating products in the mountain has reminded a major hurdles to growers. Current understanding of socioeconomic, institutional diversity and biodiversity process in mountain areas is still very limited. Normally, we know the attention to mountain regions is mostly due to the post-disaster phenomena. Systematic attention to these problems, mountain region problem, is very recent phenomena and is extremely limited in extent and coverage. There are a large gap in understanding issues specific to mountain environments and climate change impacts. The persistent knowledge gaps in understanding and delivery of sustainable mountain development were identified as an area of major concern by UNCED Agenda 21. Now, the prospects of sustainable livelihoods. There are also some prospects, development of infrastructures, facilities such as transportation, hydroelectricity generation, hotels, and housing without damaging the ecology and ecosystem of the region as the prospects for sustainable livelihoods. Management of forest resources for the well-being of mountain people should be the priority of the forest department as well as the local government. And for this purpose, people's participation, mountain people participation should be ensured in the regions. Sustainable use of natural resources and mountain-rich products, which are abundantly found in the entire mountain regions of the world and are major sources of livelihoods of the mountain people, should be ascertained, and natural resources should be properly managed. Efficient and sustainable use of landscape, biospheres for the construction of dam, development of tourism, and for the use of timber, non-timber forest products, medicinal plants will ensure sustainable livelihoods and well-being of the marginal mountain people. Education for better livelihoods through capacity building to absorb new technologies and innovation will help to sustainable livelihoods in the mountain regions. In short, in conclusion, I can say the key messages from my lecture are that climate impacts form an essential threats to mountain ecosystem, services, and populations. Many glaciers are retreating under the influence of rising temperatures. Mountain people depend on survival agriculture, wage labor, circulatory and labor migration, tourism, and mountaineering services for survival. Most households survive on a combination of livelihoods. Development of infrastructural facilities, forest resource management, sustainable use of natural resources, and education for capacity building are necessary for the mountain region community sustainable livelihoods. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your profound presentation and very precise lecture. It is extremely important that you brought in line the particularities and vulnerability of mountain livelihoods. Also, it was really interesting to see the structured, to some extent structured idea of livelihood strategy and sustainable livelihood framework that can be used for various regions, of course, including their particularities of development and the stage of development. And but this is that, to my mind, it is extremely important for such an international environment, so we can use it and we can take it with us for further and policy implementations in in livelihoods. Also, it was really brilliant to underline major constraints that I suppose are almost the same for similar livelihoods, but to have it on the slide and very structured, it is very helpful for further policy making. And also, thank you so much for bringing in light the necessity of engagement and participation of people living in this territory, knowing their ideas and their to have their real participation in the policy making. Capacity building is really a very key point here as well. I will strongly support you that capacity building to use new technology and new ideas is extremely important. Thank you so much for your presentation.